The Lagos State government has launched a probe into the collapse of a 7-story building under construction in the Banana Island area of the state. The state government claims that there were no deaths. 25 people have been rescued, with search and rescue efforts continuing. But Lagos State says it found no evidence of anyone trapped in the rubble. Our rice correspondent, Aladeojebi, initially had issues gaining access to the site of the mishap, but was finally able to speak with the father of a worker who claims his son is still missing. His report.
After spending the whole of Wednesday night at the gate of the estate, trying to enter into the site of the collapsed building, but without any success, the Arise News crew returned on Thursday morning to get first-hand facts about the collapsed structure. Like Wednesday evening, the crew, alongside other journalists, were barred from going into the estate.
Yesterday, hoodlums came here. We arrested some robbers at night. Excuse me, if you don't allow, please stay at the gate. Why are you yelling? Why are you addressing us?
It took up to 3 hours of back and forth between some representatives of the Banana Island estate and the pressmen before they bowed to pressure of allowing journalists inside the spot of the collapsed structure. The report on Wednesday afternoon indicated that the 7-story building suddenly caved in while some site workers were busy doing some concrete casting on it. The initial video showed some person standing on the high-rise when it collapsed. But in reaction, government agencies were unanimous that although 7 persons were injured and treated on the site before being taken to the hospital, they say no one died in the collapse. While the Lagos State Ministry of Physical Planning and Urban Development insists that no approval was given for the construction project.
With that combined effort, we are able to rescue 7 people alive. Those people that were rescued were treated on the spot and discharged. However, one was transferred to a private hospital where he's receiving adequate treatment. Again, we did a roll call in collaboration with the CSO, and we were informed that there is only 1 man that was missing.
As far as we are concerned, under Lagos State, we have not recorded any fatalities so far. But of course, our machinery is here, and we're carefully going through the rubbles, clearing the site, and looking to see if indeed there are any fatalities there that we can rescue or recover, as the case may be.
Residents around in Banana Island, Parkview and Ikoyi is just that they should maintain their peace. There's no problem. As it were, there is no immediate impact on their health and environment. So everybody should remain calm, and this shouldn't be seen as a tourist center. No, don't bother to say you want to come around here, because one, you'll not be allowed, and if you sneak in, it is still dangerous for you to move around here. All constructions around here, as this place is surrounded by construction sites, should stop for now.
This man here claims that his son was one of the workers on site when the building came down. He says up until Thursday afternoon, he has not been found and his mobile phone is not connecting.
I asked, how did it happen? I was told he was part of those on the building yesterday. He was the one encouraging other workers to go down when he saw signs. But instead of him to follow them, he stayed back to monitor the development. Since then, we have not seen him and his phone is no longer connecting.
While the search for the missing construction worker continues, relevant agencies of the government remain on site, digging the rubble to get to the bottom of the mess.
As per the materials that went into the construction of this building, we cannot independently confirm right here, right now, that they went through the testing process and approval process before they were used for this structure. But one thing is certain, common sense will tell us that the materials used for the building that collapsed must have come from the same source as the materials used for these other buildings that are still standing.
It is also hoped that the integrity test of the remaining 3 structures under construction will be conducted anytime soon to ascertain whether they will remain or be pulled down. Likewise, the land on which the building collapsed is also expected to be taken over by the Lagos State government in line with the state physical planning law. Oba Adeoye, Arise News, Lagos.
All right, great work from our own Oba Adeoye. The unfortunate collapse of that 7-story structure may have served as a timely reminder to all that compliance with building regulations and standards is still a far-fetched reality for most people actively engaged in the real estate sector. Resort to quantity rather than quality seems to be healthy and thriving in the sector, in spite of multiple tragedies in the past few years, owing to the willingness of many to cut corners all because of quick profit. To focus a bit more on this, we're now being joined by Kolade Aladeojebi, who is a structural engineer and creative director, Jibalade and Partners Consulting Engineers. Good morning, engineer.
Good morning.
Good to have you join us.
Thank you so much. It's such a pleasure to be here with you.
All right, good to have you.
Yes.
I mean, yet another high-profile disaster in our dear state of Lagos. You know, the one, was it last year? At,
the 21-story building on Gerrard Road.
Yes, on Gerrard Road.
Yes.
It's still there, very highbrow and everything. Banana Island will probably be one of the most exclusive, estates, not just in Nigeria, but in Africa. But here we are. Lagos State says there's no approval for the structure that has come down. What do you make of all this, and why do we keep having this recurring points, that is taking lives, destroying the society, wasting resources, so to say? What do you make of it?
Well, first of all, I want to say that this happened not again. I mean, at this stage and time of development in the world, we shouldn't be having this kind of reoccurrence. It's more mind-boggling because of the type of structure we're talking about. We're talking about multi-level buildings, which we believe that if not at all, we should have over 10 or 20 professionals that have been involved, either from the from the design stage down to the construction, to the approval, to the project management aspect of things. And you just find out that if we thoroughly look at this, there are processes that have been put in place to forestall this kind of things. But the peculiarity of Nigeria, the peculiarity of we here down, I don't want to believe it's only Nigeria, but the peculiarity of us here, it leaves a lot of bad taste in the mouth. I don't know how somebody will not have an approval and will do, because this is a 7-story building in Banana Island, which is a sandfield. Is not a natural, it was sandfield in the 70s by the military government. And then you're expected to pile such places. You're expected to do pile caps. I mean, I don't want to bore you with so much technical details, but what I'm trying to say is that there have been processes that even the piling could have taken up to a year. Are we saying that no government official got hint of this? Are we saying that the neighbors, are we saying that people around do not have information to pass across? I don't think that is the situation. I just think that somebody powerful is behind this, and they've gotten away with it this time around. But it's a pity that resources have been lost. Thankfully or hopefully, they said no life has been lost yet, or one life is lost. We're not yet sure. But it's so sad. It's so sad. I mean,
I'd like to just pick up on that. The fact that we're still trying to, thankfully, 25 people have been accounted for. But from the reports that our correspondent Oba Adeoye put out, you could see that man saying that he was almost 100% sure that his son was part of the people in there. And then we know that the Lagos State Emergency Services said that they had scanned the building with a high precision 3D imagery system. So I mean, as someone who is familiar with these kind of gadgets or instruments, how sure are we that in using that imagery system they've been able to properly scan the rubble to make sure that there's nobody in there? Could there maybe be a possibility that the 3D imagery printing, not printing system, the 3D imagery equipment might have missed somebody that is still buried on that rubble, maybe still fighting for their lives?
I think it's very much possible because equipments are not 100% efficient. That's where we have depreciation in equipment. And then the human the major part is the human error. And apart from that, when they say they have a scanning equipment that is scanning through a collapsed building, was the equipment designed to scan through a collapsed building, or was it designed to scan through a building that is standing? Apart from that, what does this thing see through? Does it see only through concrete? Does it see through steel? Does it? I mean, anything could have happened. Okay, for example, let's say you can see through concrete, and where this guy happens to be, maybe there was a container structure inside the building, and he decided to hide himself there. While you're using the equipment, can he see through that equipment? I don't know how sure they could be, but I think a whole lot still has to be done, and be sure that the life of this young man is safe, or there are no casualties, really. I don't think they should say that 100% categorically, that no life is lost or they've scanned. I mean, there should still be a margin for error.
All right, from a professional's point of view,
yes, please.
Looking at the much that we have seen so far, we're not sure in terms of the causative factor, in precise terms. Some people have alleged that there was a truck or something like that hit a side of the structure. But from a professional's point of view, what do you think will have been responsible for this? I know that there are at least two main agencies of government that ensure that things like this do not happen. LAPSCA is there, material testing agency, is also there. So at every point in time, there ought to be supervision.
Yes.
Will it be that the foundation is weak, or that the equipment, the blocks, the quality of what materials used is so bad that nobody could see that this was a disaster waiting to happen? What could have caused this sort of, because the video that people saw, it practically went down like that, like you were watching a movie. What do you think could have been responsible?
Well, I've had this discussion in the group, and from a professional point of view, if I look at that from my training, I'll say it's a foundation problem, but nobody is sure yet. The test needs to be carried out. A lot needs to be done, integrity tests. I mean, they need to do that. But if I look at it, and I just want to say, I'll say it's a foundation problem, the way it came down. If it was a column problem, there is a way, we call this building, we call them lateral, or we call them frame structures. There is a way it will come down, and I'm sure you've seen such. When a tall building comes down, not everything comes down. You just see a particular part collapse, and you still see the other part standing. Especially the one that happened, was it in Chicago in the US last year or something? Those are when a column fails, because these kind of buildings are lattice building. They are designed to support all aspects of the building itself. So when one fails, the others are there. When one column fails, the other are there to transfer the load. We call it frame structure. So, I mean, coming down like this, I think personally, based on experience, based on things, I think is a foundation problem. Now, what caused the foundation problem? It could have been the pile itself failed. It could be the materials. But even if it's materials, it doesn't come down this way. I mean, there is a level, that is what we call the strength of materials. There is a level that each material has been designed to carry, and if it goes beyond that, it doesn't just collapse like a toothpick is falling down. Because when you go beyond the strength, it's not that thing has totally failed. It has just gone beyond the limits. It's just like a rubber band. When you're pulling a rubber band, it gets to a limit and then it breaks.
Which was the problem with Gerard, because it was designed to be 8 floors, 15 floors, and then they took it to 21.
So I think it's the same problem here, because the structural engineer could have designed it for 5 floors. We do what we call factor of safety. We consider factor of safety. So when I check the coming load on it, which is either the imposed load or the self load, I now use a factor of safety of like 2 times 4, 2.4. That means I'm increasing my risk by almost 200%. So for a building to come down, you must have done a lot of wrong things, a lot of wrong things. Let me say, for example, maybe the structural engineer designed the space to the column to be 1 meter by 1 meter, and because you needed more space in your flat, the people on site decide to reduce it to 600. Already there is a problem. But even at 600, if you still stay at the 5th floor that they designed it to be, it will stay. But once you go beyond that, you go to the 6th floor, you go to the 7th floor, you go to the 8th floor, now you have overloaded the structure. It is just like if you wear, good example, if you wear a shoe with flat sole.
Yeah.
When you're walking, it's easier to work on sand, on sharp sand, for example.
Yeah.
When you're wearing a shoe with heel, ma'am, I'm sure it's not easy
It
because your load, your point of impact are so much reduced that no matter what it is, it exerts more pressure on that particular point. So I think I will think that's what the problem is. But until final investigation is done and conducted and concluded, we will still be speculating. But from design perspective, these things can easily be deduced that this is what went wrong. I think it's a foundation problem. I don't think it's a column problem. I heard them say a truck ran into it, number one.
Yeah.
When a truck, at what speed is the truck running inside that compound?
It will have to be a truck walking. If there was a truck at all,
people
will
are
be walking there.
I mean, and then it's going
to
at
deliver
a pace,
load
to
or
deliver.
something.
At what speed is this running? Because for you, even when you're doing car test, I'm sure you have seen this. When you are running at 20 kilometers per hour and they do a car test, there is a level of impact your car will have.
That's right.
When you are running at 160 kilometers per hour, there is a level of impact, which is the dangerous part. That's why they will say don't speed beyond 100 kilometers. So if a truck is within that compound and it's moving at maybe 20 kilometers and he hits, I'm sure the truck driver is not mad. Even when he hit it, was it still trying to drive into the column?
It shouldn't be enough pressure to bring an entire...
But if that had happened, what could have been the consequence?
The consequences is just for the part of that building to come down. Most likely it will not even come down. Remember I said these things are designed to be frame structure.
Yeah.
Frame structure means, for example, you have a stool at home, 4-legged stool.
Yes.
If you remove one stool, what happens? It still stays. The only problem is when you now stay at the angle where the leg is removed. That's when you have a tilt. Because you are there. So, and these buildings are not only standing on 4 legs. Some of them are standing on 20, on 30 legs. So removing one shouldn't cause this kind of problem.
Okay, so let's talk about the integrity of the remaining buildings. Because I remember Oba mentioning that fine, we have this building that has come down. There are 2 structures still left, and even like the surrounding structures. I have a friend that actually lives just behind that's like the white building behind, and he was asking. He actually told me
she was not the one that recorded the video.
Honestly, that white building, you see it at the back. So he actually directed this question and said, is it something that the neighbors should be worried about? Should they, looking at these remaining 2 structures, should they be pulled down? Should the neighbors be worried? Do they need to move out for some time? Do integrity tests need to be conducted on the buildings, in that in that area? What is the next course of action for, those that live there and for the rest of the remaining 2 buildings that in that property?
Standard rules and regulations says integrity should be conducted on the buildings that are right there and then surrounding buildings. But from experience, from practice, from design perspective, I don't think there is too much to be worried about, but the test should be conducted. If it's a foundation failure, we're saying a particular part of a building failed. So it's not the whole soil of the whole area, it's not the whole foundation of the adjacent building. It just has to do with this particular one. But the ones that is of worry that nobody should occupy right now until, I would think nobody should occupy right now until all the tests are concluded, is the ones that are, if you look at the video, there was a crane that fell towards the right, and I think it touched the other building as well too. So with that closeness, the impact would have shaken some things. But trust me, we've considered all these things because there is natural disaster, there is human disaster. And when you're designing, you consider all these things. To a very large extent, these things should still be able to withstand the impact of this collapsed building, but integrity tests should be done. And from the integrity tests, it will be known if it is safe to use or not. But houses that are like 50, 100 meters away, 100 meters away, I don't think they should be worried. The only thing they should worry about...
50, 100 meters away.
100 meters away. The only worry that they should have right now is their own foundation. Solid. It might still be standing, so they might need to try and find out about that. But based on the impact of this one, I don't think there should be too much of a worry.
The issue of the National Building Code,
yes.
Which I believe from what professionals do say, that it hasn't been passed at the national level, does it have anything to do with regulating across board that, you know, members of your profession, civil engineers, architects, etc., like a national working document that they all subscribe to? Is that a factor here? And could it, is it in any way responsible for the spate of collapsed buildings that we are witnessing, not only in Lagos, but across Nigeria, because there is no codified national building code that has been approved for the country?
Yes, I believe it's responsible, but that is not an excuse. Because there might not be a national code, there are state codes, there are guidelines that is supposed to guide everybody when you're doing this kind of structures. I think if they approve it nationally, it will help in terms of we professionals can be able to take charge of things, in the sense that if I feel you are doing something that is wrong, and once it's adopted is against the law, I can raise an alarm, I can write a letter, I could get involved even when I'm not asked to get involved, and then that could help. But for every state, they have building regulations, they have building codes. The only question is, do we stick to these building codes? Do we maintain these building codes? Are professionals allowed to do their work when it comes to this building code? What do I mean, are professionals allowed to do their work? For example, I'm on a project site and I'm saying this is what we need. For example, I need a 20 mm reinforcement to carry my columns.
You're saying that as who now?
As a professional. And the client is telling me, look, my younger brother said 16 mm is fine. What most of us that are professionals, to cut costs. What most of us would do is to walk away, but you can't take an action against them. It will have to get to a point that I should be able to report them and say, look, I designed this, or I was supervising this, or I was building this, and this person is already getting prepared for a disaster to happen. I should be able to report them.
Because the name of the company, the engineering company, will be on the banner.
Yes.
You know, that's mandated by law to be erected. The consultant.
Yeah, everybody is there. But how much can we do? For example, the one in Ikoyi here. The guy that there was a report that the civil engineer withdrew. The consultant. Yes, he was my classmate.
Wrote a letter or something like that.
That is the only thing that saved him. Because if not, under our own regulatory body, which is Correct. He would have lost his livelihood if he doesn't go to prison.
He would have lost his license.
Yes, they take it away. The guys that are here that built this building, I'm sorry, professionally, they are done for, whatever the reason is.
But will that be from Current's end or from Lagos State Government's end?
From Lagos State Government's end is to prosecute. From Current, they withdraw your certificate. And without a certificate, with prosecution from Lagos State, what else can you do?
But are you saying, regardless of what might have happened, talking about the fact that maybe an investigation might come out, a situation like this, at Gerard Road, where the structural engineer or the consultant on site wrote a letter, but in this case, if there is no evidence that that person withdrew, even though he might not be directly responsible for what happened, we're seeing that there's a possibility that his or her license might be taken away, just for the fact that the building that he was working on lacked structural integrity.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Because how do you prove that you told them if there's no letter, if there's nothing? It's a word of mouth. You told me, I didn't tell you. I told you, you didn't tell me. That's not admissible anywhere. So, I mean, it's a whole lot. But I understand from the perspective of we professionals as well. You need to feed your family. You need to take good care of things. And the owner of the structure is saying, this is what I want to do. I have built 100 houses. Who are you? And then, they tell you how they have done this. It's quite difficult. But I believe when we have these regulations, we have all that protects the professionals as well, things would actually get better. Things will get a whole lot better.
Do you think that we will be seeing the next scapegoat from this, given the fact that for Gerard, he took the job of the Commissioner for Fiscal Planning, and I think that the permanent secretary in that ministry was even transferred or something like that. But here, from initial reactions, we're not hearing strong words as to those who are behind it, as to who the owners are, as to the engineers and the consultants behind. The only thing that we've been able to deduce is that, it doesn't have an approval. Who should the government go after? And will just, sacrificing somebody assuage the fact that yet another disaster has happened?
That's a very tough question. You want to be careful what you say. But I think the agency should be held responsible. There is no other, because when we're doing approval, we pay for these things. They're supposed to come in, they're supposed to check, they're supposed to take your materials. They're not even supposed to come and test your material on site. They will just come and announce, take it to the laboratory to go and test. They have been paid for all these things, or they're expected to do these things, and they don't do it. But it's quite easy to always push the blame back to the outsiders, to the owners, but government has a lot of responsibility. Actually, the major responsibility is actually on the government, and we've found out that the people in charge just get a slap on the palm, and then they let them go. Like you said, they moved somebody from one ministry to another. I think that was even done because a lot of outcry was out there.
That's right.
The one that happened in Lekki,
many people also died.
Yes, and people died. Because the one in Lekki that I don't want to mention the name of the company, but that happened like 5 years ago. They went to court and all that. At the end of the day, the owner of the business was discharged. The only person that was still held responsible that went to prison is the engineer in charge. No government official was. Because that one too is the same. I had they approved for 5 floors. Yeah. They were going to 8 floors. You don't. But when they want to get, okay, I'm on here. But when they want to get something on you, they know how to go to your. They know how to come to your site and catch you doing dubious. But once you settle it, it's gone. I think it's high time that more people in government start taking responsibility for these things, up to the level of the director, because these approvals get to the top level before you get approval.
Yes.
It's not just one engineer in the local government office that approves. It gets to LabSCRA, it gets to town planning. You get for your COO, the governor has to sign on it. So when this
even the approval that is beyond 5 floors.
5 floors.
Ideally, it should get to the governor.
Yeah, it takes. It
should get to the governor.
Governor might not have time to be checking all the.
But that's what the rule says.
He might not have the time. But there are people that have. The director generals, the permanent secretaries, the directors in the ministry. This is their core area of competence, or what they are supposed to do. And until we start holding them responsible for these things. Every businessman wants to make a profit, but they don't know that they are losing at the end of the day. Whatever has been invested in this project is gone.
It's gone for
totally.
life.
Definitely.
It's gone for life.
And
the other one,
most likely, the land, the plot of land is also forfeited to government.
No, it's going to the government.
Well,
it's not.
thank you.
It's not. It's going to the government.
This has been, very, very heartbreaking. I'm just glad that we didn't have the same amount of people that lost their lives last year happen in this situation. Yeah. But thank you so much for being here, Mr. Kolade, Aladeojebi, Aladeojebi, a structural engineer, creative director, Jibalade, and Partners Consulting Engineers, for your frank analysis. Thank you so much.